In today's show, we're going to kick off our series on PowerApps Forms. So this is the introduction video. We're going to talk about connecting to your data source, pulling in the different columns that you need, and then kind of the layout, introduction of data cards, kind of the very first layer in there, right? And since PowerApps Forms have so many nooks and crannies, we're going to break out into several different videos so that in later videos we can do more complex things. And then at the end of the series, hopefully we can do some really scary stuff with PowerApps Forms. So this is that first video to make sure you have the foundational knowledge you need. But first, here's our intro. Hi, my name is Shane Young with PowerApps 911. Those guys. In today's show, we're going to do an introduction to PowerApps Forms. So I realize you've probably already used Forms, right? Because they're in all of our solutions everywhere. I get that. But I get questions almost daily from people like, hey, how does this part work or this part? Or I find that a lot of people with Forms fake it. Be honest, I feel like I fake it with Forms. So no big deal. But what we're going to do in this series is we're going to try and go in and we're going to try and cover every single thing ever to know about Forms, which is pretty daunting. So that's why we're going to break it up into different videos. In this video, though, this is the first one. It's going to get you going. We're going to talk about how to bring some data in. We're going to talk about then how to design the form, those data cards. Just make sure you understand some of the options that are available there. And we're just going to jump in and make this video. Okay, so over here on my desktop, I have got just a blank tablet form open. Nothing here, right? And so the very first thing we're going to add to the screen actually is a gallery, right? Because before we can do a form, we really need a gallery on the screen. So I'm just going to throw a vertical gallery on here. And I'm going to use SharePoint as a data source for this particular set of videos. But it doesn't matter, right? There's nothing SharePoint specific here. Matter of fact, some of the little nuggets I'm going to give you about some of the other data sources. So don't freak out if you're like, I'm not a SharePoint person. No big deal. This is going to work for you because all the data sources after we do this are the exact same. Exact same is probably the wrong word, but are very similar. So, okay. So there's my gallery, right? It's just pulling in some SharePoint people. You can see our good friend Chewy is here. My buddy Greg was dumb enough to send me a picture of him driving his truck. So he now has an ugly picture on there. All right. But so now we have a gallery. We can get in and do the thing that we actually want to do, and that's work with forms. So click on Forms up here. And so the first thing I want to talk about, right, because we're going to cover all the pieces hopefully, is this whole idea there's an edit form and a display form. So what's really important to understand is that 99% of the time I choose edit form. Why? Because a display form can only display data. Display forms are not flexible. You can't change their modes. You can't make them an edit form or a new form or customize them in the same way. So they don't even have all the same options as a edit form. So if you're ever on the fence, like you don't know, always make an edit form because I can make an edit form do everything a display form does, but I can't make a display form do what an edit form does. Weird? I agree. So don't overthink it. Just know, unless you have a very specific reason why, always use an edit form. So there's my edit form. And so it's like, hey, what's my data source? Well, it needs to be the same data source as my gallery, right? Because that's how we're going to feed data across. So we're going to say employees. And so after a few seconds, PowerApps designs a form for us. Now let's grab that and kind of move it over this way a little bit, like so. And we'll kind of bring it down. And if we look, right, there's a whole bunch of fields here. So we're going to get into what all these do, what they are. And so here you can see one of the first nuances of forms. My form was 3 columns. I was resizing. It went to 2. Annoying. No big deal. This happens. I would consider this a bug. Shh. If you just go back in here and click on 3 column again, it just automatically fixes it. So don't overthink that. But before we dive in there, what I want you to do is, so right now the data source is employees, but it's all blank, right? And so what we need to set is the item property. This is what determines what item is shown in here. And so what I'm going to do is I want to just use gallery 1 dot selected, right? So whatever row they chose over here, that's the data we want to put over here. And we will highlight, let's see, I'm going to hold down the Alt key so I can click on Chewy. So there we go. So Chewy, it'll be our piece of data we work on here. All right, that looks right to me. So with our form over here, when I have the whole form selected, and you'll note that the whole form is selected, right, by looking over here on the left and seeing it's all highlighted, you see things like, all right, so your data source, your field, your layouts. The trick is if you click any 3 of these, you get the same pop-out menu. So let's talk about what these do. So the first one, edit data, that will open your data source if it can. So for example, I'm using SharePoint. It knows how to send me to the SharePoint URL. So if I click on edit data, it'll fire open a new tab and go to that SharePoint list. Okay. So that doesn't always show up, just depends on what your data source is. Refresh. This is the button that we forget about. But what will happen with me especially, like if I'm building an app, I don't always get my SharePoint or Excel or SQL data source right on the first try. So maybe I'm like halfway through, I'm in here and I'm like, oh man, I need another column. Right? So I jump over to my data source, I add another column. So then what I have to do is I have to come back over here and hit refresh, and this will go back and retrieve this. So what you want to do though is if I were to add a column, I need to go refresh this one and this one, right? Both of those controls so they get the new version or the new columns, new data, that type of stuff. If you're having problems with that, the other thing you could do is just save and come back in. And when you come back in, they would be there. But refresh saves you a lot of that. Okay, snap to columns in 3. So I already kind of showed you the 3-column thing. But what I want you to know about snap to columns is this is the key to you designing a form that looks the way you want it to look. Okay, so let's go over here. And so actually let's flip-flop these guys real quick. So I'm going to drag the gallery over. Sorry, I'll just cut this. I'm going to rearrange and I'll be right back. Okay, sorry about that. I've never designed a screen this way where the form's on the left and the gallery's on the right, but this will be easier because of the popover. Anyway, so one of the things I want you to know about snap to columns is what that means is if you look at title and you're like, man, this column really should be bigger. What can you do? You can just grab this and drag it over. So see, so now dog, the title column here, is taking 2 columns. I can also grab this and this will make the whole row vertically taller or shorter. So this is a handy way when you're designing your forms, because I have had customers who have tried to go in here and say, you know what, I don't want this snap to column. So he undid that, and then he would come over here and he's like, all right, I want this to be just like that. And it kind of worked, but he would press the wrong button or click the wrong thing, and then it would auto flow everything again, and it'd be really messed up. I would never build a solution where I wasn't using snap to columns. So we do that, it's going to reset everything back, boom. Now, what he could have done though, because he wanted to have these be different sizes, one of the things you might do is you might say, instead of 3, I want to have a 6-column layout. Okay, so PowerApps didn't reflow and squish all my data, but now I have half columns. So look, so now I could be like, all right, you guys split that, right? Because now they're both across 3 columns. These guys are all across 2 columns. So the same look, but a little more flexibility. And if you get really crazy, then you can go over here and say, all right, I want to do, 12 columns, right? And then you can even do it into really tiny increments. So that's a very important thing when you're trying to visually make a form work the way you want. Try to stick to snap to columns and then just take advantage of the fact you can put on 12 and move and expand in different pieces. You'll always be happier that you did, right? So that's one of the tricks I wanted to make sure you guys understood was this whole snap to column. Another piece that comes in here is what if, you know what, you're like, hey, I want to kind of do this, but I want title to be up here all by itself. But I don't want it to be all the way across because that just looks silly. I don't know. What you can do, hit these ellipses, add a custom card. Okay, this is going to add a custom data card. So if we scroll down here at the bottom, data card 1, I'm going to grab this card, and you can do this with data cards. I'm going to grab it, I'm going to drag it up. And I'm going to put it right behind title. Boom, just like that. So now if we scroll back over here, so now I can take and make title whatever size I want. There we go. Maybe that's what we want to do with title. And you know what? That custom card got too big, so we're going to kind of grab it and make it smaller. But so then now we've kind of done this. And so now if we were to hit play and preview our app, I've got that dead white space that you wanted to make your form look better. Or maybe what you want to do is come over here, and so then now that you got that white space, maybe you want to have a cute little picture. I don't know. What's a cute little picture? Probably not. Put an airplane on here. We're just talking about travel. And this is another thing that people do wrong. Look what happened. Icon 1 is not underneath my form. It is on top of my form, but it is not part of my form. I make this mistake. People on my YouTube channel make this mistake all the time. No big deal. We're just going to delete it. We're going to click over here to our data card. See how data card 1 is now highlighted? And now we're going to say icons, and if I can find, and we're going to do a bell now because I don't want to find the airplane again. But then now I've got this cute little, icon here. So I could put some text, some instructions, I could put the company logo, but I had this kind of a little bit more of a design experience by just using that custom card and putting data in there. All right, so that's another one of the tricks I want to make sure you understood. All right, so speaking of cards, let's go back over here. So let's click on Form 1. All right, we'll click over to this. So here's all of my pieces. Oh, I guess we should talk about layouts. So layout, vertical versus horizontal, this really just determines whether title is above the field or to the left of the field in this example. I have never made one with horizontal, to be truth be told. They're always vertical. I don't know why. No reason, just always has. All right. So then the next thing that I want to talk about is customizing these. All right. So if you look at title, well, let's not go that far yet. Let's click on this. So for every field that we did for a data source, we had PowerApps creates us a data card for every field that we're showing. So when I click on this field, you can see that the title data card 1 is down here. Remember, good naming conventions will make your life easier, but I'm not going to make you watch me rename a bunch of stuff. But notice with this data card, what happened is there's a few things. So star visible 1. So this little star shows up because this is a required field. And so PowerApps built in some logic to show that only when it's required. Error message, if there's an error, like you forget to fill in this one, the error message that shows up, that's driven right here. And once again, it's also hidden. But if you want to change it, it's there. The data card value, this is a piece that we most often will mess with, right? Because you want to customize, you want to change this to be a different behavior, different defaults, calculations, whatever you're trying to do. Most of the time, this is the piece that we're going to do, but that's the input field. And so the way that that input field is determined, if you go back over here and look, so you can see that title, when it connected to my data source, it said, hey, that's a text. And so if we hit this little drop down, you can see here's some of the different options for formatting and how you'd want that text drop down or text column to manifest itself over here. Honestly, I almost never, like literally never change these or even use any of these options here, which is probably, a mistake on my part. I'd probably recreate some things that are here for free. But the reason I wanted to talk about this with you today was not to tell you that I was making mistakes. Not bad though. Is I wanted you to know that this is important for you to understand, right? If we click the ellipses, that the title, so field name is title, field type is string. PowerApps determined for us that that was a string field when it connected to the data source. You can't undo this. If PowerApps chooses the wrong field type for you, you need to go fix your data source. You can't tell PowerApps, no, this is not really a string. This is supposed to be a number. I don't know why you're saying this. In like SharePoint, SQL, CDS, that type of stuff, I don't ever have a problem with this. Where this comes up a lot is with my people who are doing Excel-driven solutions. So in your Excel table, based on the formatting of the column, PowerApps tries to determine what type of column you have. And so a lot of times what will happen, not a lot, sometimes what will happen is Excel will get confused and will tell PowerApps that that date column you're showing it is actually a number column or is a text column, and it causes you a lot of grief. And in those cases, I just don't have to go back to Excel, delete that column, and recreate it and make sure that the formatting is the thing I want PowerApps to see. I've not been successful once PowerApps sees a column as something that's not correct, fixing that column in Excel. I always have to recreate the column to get it to work. So maybe you'll have better luck, but I just point this out to you so you make sure that if you're having data problems with your forms, that you're making sure that the column types, right? So this is a field type complex. You're making sure that PowerApps and your data source are talking about the same thing. And if they don't, you can't fix PowerApps. You got to go to your data source and get it to show PowerApps what PowerApps expects to see. So that one causes people to lose a lot of sleep. So I wanted to call that out. Also with data cards, and we're not going to do a bunch of it, but if you looked at this, you're like, hey, I don't want this to be title. I want to be awesome title. Sure, why not, right? You can't modify this, right? It's grayed out. The reason for that is if you go over here and click on advanced, you're going to see that by default, all the data cards are locked. This keeps you from doing silly things on accident. But when you decide you really want to do this silly thing, what you can do is you can go over here and say unlock to change properties. Now, as soon as you unlock it, notice that title went from purple, right, like all of the other ones, to gray, like that data card 1. That's because if you click on this now, this is a custom card. So you've told PowerApps you want to be in charge of how this card behaves and do. And a lot of the solutions I build, I have to do this, almost all of them. So I wanted to make sure you understood. You could use advanced. And so then now I can come up here and say, now I want this to be super title. And so then now the display is super title. All right. So that's important to understand. That's how you do this. Now, if you get in there and you're like, man, I really messed this up, right? It's my first time doing this. This is not working right. No problem. What you can do is, so right here we have the title custom card. Scroll on the bottom. Down here at the bottom, somewhere, PowerApps is being rude. All right, let's unselect, or let's delete this card. So we're gonna say delete this custom card. When we delete this custom card, now down at the bottom, there he is our title. And if we click on it, it turns purple because it's now a locked default PowerApps controls everything card. And so then we can drag it all the way back up here. 9 times out of 10, I can't get it to drag to the top. So I have to drag to the top or one below and then drag the bottom down. I've seen it work, but I can never get it to work. So then boom, now we're back to our design, right? We can grab this. And so now it's like we never did all that crazy customizations that we just did. So I wanted to make sure you knew about that. Also, remember, you don't have to unlock the card to do everything. So with this card, if you decided, you really want this text to be in a different color, well, you can change, oh, but you gotta spell it right. You can change the color and things like that without unlocking the card, right? Still locked. So not all changes required. Visual ones don't. Structural ones do. And speaking of structural ones, and I'm not going to go down this rabbit hole, but make sure you also understand that how does this data card know that when you put in dog here, it needs to write that back? This is a little preview of one more advanced things we'll cover later. But if you look right here, there's an update. And so what update does, says when we submit this form later, this is what is going to drive, we're going to write data card value 22.text, which you're like, what is that? Well, that is this right here. He's going to write that text value to the data source or edit the data source or update the data source. So update is how we control what gets sent when we go and do this. So a little more advanced, something we're not going to go over today, but I think that is something that's important to know. The other thing that I want to talk about here is we're going to go in, and now that we've kind of got this going the way we want, what I want to do also though is there's a bunch of columns here that I don't want to see, especially with your SharePoint data sources. So I just go to the bottom here, just start unchecking these things, right? Go away. No one cares about any of you. Boom, 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 right? And we're not breaking anything. We're just changing what is being displayed on the screen. And so speaking of what's being displayed on screen, one of the things that I will sometimes do is maybe I have a column in my data source I want to update, but I don't want the user to be able to update it, right? I don't want them to know I'm updating it. So for example, a lot of times I'll make a column on in a SQL database, I'll make a column for what user submitted this, and I will just write that data directly. So the column shows up over here. And then remember that with each of these data cards, I can control, hit the drop down here, their visible property. So if I don't want to show you who this was modified by at all, right? I can just do false, which would be silly because that I might as well have just unselected this box, right? Just get it off the screen. But what you might do is put modified back. Right now it's mad at me. It's like, I'm not going to show you who modified this. Whatever. You be grumpy. You do you, right? But what you can do with this data card is maybe you only want to show it to them certain times. And so what we'll do in the next video is we're going to go in here and we're going to look at how you might set the visible and make this an if. So you'll say, hey, if this is a new form, hide it. If this is an edit form, hide it. But if this is a view form, show it. So then that way, based on the mode the forms mode, then you can control what the experience is. So I've shown that in some other videos, and I think we'll just do that in the next video where we talk about the different cards, or the different, at next level, right? We're going to talk about the form modes and that type of stuff in the next video, because this one's getting to be long already. I think from the design point of view, though, I think this gets you guys going, right? So this helps you hopefully understand how you control your forms, some real core form basics, and so that we're kind of starting to move down the path. In the next video, we're going to go in and we're going to start with this same exact form, but we're going to introduce some buttons around changing the different form modes so you can learn to manipulate those. So hopefully you enjoyed this. Hopefully this helps you. If you have any questions about this, hit me notes below. Also, if you look in the comments, that's where I'll leave or in the description, somewhere down there, I'll leave the link to the next video, but I'm literally going to record the next video as soon as I stop recording this one. So hopefully they're coming out very close in proximity. All right. Thanks, and have a great day. Hey, it's me again. If you got a second, click the subscribe button. That always keeps me making more videos. Or if you want to work together, need some help getting your Power Apps going, hit me up at PowerApps 911. Always happy to work together. Or finally, if you're really just looking for more videos, that's probably what it is, check out the Power Apps playlist over here and enjoy that. All right, thanks, and have a great day.